Well, hello, everybody. As Dawn mentioned, I am the Mark Dunley, and I am co-chair of EcoAction, and I am trying to get all this to work properly. But this is our Earth Day to Hi, there we are. This is our Earth Day to May Day kickoff, and this is something that the Greens have been doing over the last decade or so. Certainly nothing that others in the activist community have not, done over the year. But the general idea is to stress the importance of the connections between the various movements. The Greens, of course, are well known as being an environmental ecological party, and so Earth Day is something where we can stress our issues such as climate change and rights of nature, biodiversity type issues, the need to stop plastics, but also as a larger political party, we understand the need to make the connections to other movements. We're very, very supportive, particularly of the concept of May Day, the concept of worker rights. Increasingly, May Day has also been emphasizing the issue of immigrant rights. And that also, if we're going to, really have changes, that we need to build connections with other movements. That solving climate change will not happen without, system change, and so therefore we need to, connect to the Black Lives Matters movement, to movements for economic justice, the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer movement, the Me Too movement, that is all the same issue. It's the 1% versus the 99%. And so the idea behind, Earth Day to May Day is sort of how can we try to highlight those questions. And what we're going to do this evening, I'm going to give a quick sort of introduction to that, talk a little bit about the climate movement and the work that the Green Party has done with the Green New Deal, which is something that we initiated back in 2010, which has become much more popular over the years. But the idea about connecting a timeline of 10 years to get to zero emissions and 100% renewable energy, with the need for an economic bill of rights that guarantees people a living wage job, guaranteed income, but also universal health care through a single payer system, and affordable housing, and free education, through college, at least through a public college. And I'm going to start to share at this point. So after I speak, David Schwartzman will speak about the issue of the military and the climate. He's a member of the DC Greens. And then Dawn Marie Green, sometimes also known as Cronin, will finish up as our initial presentation. Each of us about 10 minutes, and she'll be talking about some of the concepts of how we do green living. And then the last half hour is both an opportunity for comments and questions from the participants, but also an opportunity to get some ideas about how we as the Green Party, the Green Movement, can be doing more during the Earth Day to May Day to raise up some of these issues. Now, for some reason, this doesn't want to move quite at the moment. There we go. So, as I said, Earth Day to May Day is important to build connections with other movements. I mentioned some of the things that we're concerned about that we've been working on the last year. Plastics is a new coal. We did do a forum 2 months ago about the rights of nature and biodiversity, and also how we support worker rights and immigrant rights. One of the things we do is we talk about on our webpage, and we'll send you the link to the webpage for Earth Day and May Day. We talk about some of the things people can do in order to build support and involvement around Earth Day to May Day. We can organize our own webinars and forums. Certainly many of us on the EcoAction Committee would be happy to volunteer to be a speaker if you need some outside speaker. There is a link up here, which we'll send to you afterwards, about where we've compiled from that recent forum about some of the actions people can take around the issue of biodiversity and rights of nature. And then certainly the issue of the war in Ukraine and its impact upon the climate as a concern. Greenpeace has a link up there. People can organize call-ins. We may organize a call-in. We've done a number of call-ins around trying to push the Biden administration and Congress to adopt a real Green New Deal, and particularly to declare a climate emergency and take a number of executive actions on climate, as has been outlined in climatepresident.org. And we also provide organizing examples around Earth Day, art builds, the art of protest. I've written a new book, which you can get on my website for free at the moment, for the Green Education Legal Fund, so gelfny.org. And at the top, you'll see I'm putting out the planetary fire. And it has links both to the art of protest and the organizing guides, and then some links to some of the events going on for May Day and immigration rights. And this is just a picture of some of my, favorite actions over the years. This was out in Seattle, and I think about 500 people went out in various kayaks and blocked Shell from bringing up, I guess, an oil drilling rig up into Alaska that wouldn't let it move. And after that, a lot of groups were doing kayak events. In fact, here in the Capital District, Albany, New York, we went on the Hudson River to, protest something that was being developed. And, it was quite fun, different kind of way to do, protest. And this, of course, is the famous protest out at North Dakota, DAPL, trying to stop the Dakota Access pipeline. Actually, I was campaign manager. Actually, one of the last things I did as campaign manager for Jill Stein in her 2016 campaign for president was to, before somebody else replaced me for the last 2 months, we got Jill to go out to DAPL. Eventually, she got arrested for writing graffiti on the bulldozers, please don't, bulldoze me. And, here, some of the other steps we can take for Earth Day to May Day is we can support events being organized by other groups and provide links to that. People versus Fossil Fuels, we worked a lot with over the last couple of years. Stop the Money Pipeline basically is going after trying to get banks and other financial institutions to stop lending money to the fossil fuel industry. Unfortunately, since the Paris Climate Accords, I believe in 2014, 2015, the amount of money that banks have been committing has actually increased, particularly the big ones in the United States are Wells Fargo, Chase Manhattan, Citibank, and Bank of America. And Third Act, which is a new group that Bill McKibben, who started 350.org, did a National Day of Action around March 21st. We participated that here in the Capital District, had about 200 people participate in a march. Notice the Extinction Rebellion is having an Earth Day to May Day event out there in Chicago. The National Green Party has been very supportive of the railroad workers and their strikes. One of the things that we've been supportive of has been the nationalization of the railroads, partly both to improve the quality of railroads, but also to improve the how they maintain the tracks, so we don't have all these derailments, such as we saw out in East Palestine, where vinyl chloride, which is a very toxic chemical that is only used to make PVC plastic pipes, derailed, and then the state sort of made a big mistake and burnt, 5 tankerfuls of vinyl chloride, which created this tremendous environmental program. Certainly trying to look for ways to support the environmental justice community. Climate Justice Alliance has a lot of good stuff. Break free from plastics. Plastics is the new coal as the fossil fuel industry determines that its future is limited because we have to start burning it. They are looking for ways to use petrochemicals, and one of the big things they're really investing tens of billions of dollars into plastic manufacturing. And then also just, whatever Earth Day, May Day rallies are around, helping to build up support, hand out leaflets, show up. Climate change is getting worse, particularly all the wildfires. This one is, you can probably guess, from Australia, but obviously tremendous amount of wildfires taking place out in California. Floods, actually, when I tried to help write my book, was right when they were having those floods down in Kentucky. Lots of floods going all over the place. This one, I believe, someplace in East Asia. Droughts, the opposite problem. The West has been experiencing a pretty tremendous drought, though I guess the snow has somewhat alleviated it this year. And then the Arctic. We are seeing the Arctic and the Antarctic melt at a lot faster rate than the scientists had predicted. I think for the last 6 years, there was about a 5-degree increase Fahrenheit in temperature on an annual basis. And so we're seeing temperatures now in the Arctic that we were not expecting, or scientists were not expecting to see until the end of the century. One of the things I think the Greens in general had to make the point is that time is rapidly running out to avoid climate collapse. And I know here in New York, which is where I live, we passed the so-called best climate law in the country, 3.5 years ago. And one of the things we make clear, this best climate law in the country is nowhere near fast enough in order to avoid climate collapse. We have to cut emissions much, much faster than any of the states are doing at the particular moment. The IPC, United Nations, continues to put out reports that in order that we will exceed the so-called 1.5 degree target for global warming sometime in the next decade, if not sooner. I always point out IPC is in fact a pretty flawed group. It's not cutting edge, and we can go more details about that later. But one of the big problems is that all their statements have to get approval from the petrostates like the United States, Russia, China, Brazil, Saudi Arabia. One of the things that people don't understand is that the IPC, when it set out its goal, cutting emissions by 43% by 2030, they admit that that's grossly inadequate to actually avoid keeping warmer below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We'll blow way past 1.5 degrees. And so what they say is we need to invest very heavily, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars in carbon capture technology. And while we're certainly going to have to figure out ways to get carbon out of the atmosphere, we would say look more at some of the natural solutions. Despite decades of investment in carbon capture technology and tens of billions of dollars, it's never worked, or at least doesn't work at scale. And one of the things that Greta Thunberg, when she spoke at the United Nations, says, we cannot continue to rely on your little miracles occurring. Things are too difficult. I notice we're running out of time, so I'm going to try to jump ahead here. I can. One of the things I really do think that the Greens can do is really make the point that one of the solutions to climate change is ending capitalism. And not many people make that point. Surprisingly, the Pope made that point in his labor encyclical, that we cannot survive capitalism, that the drive for growth, and particularly the decision to allocate resources economically based on maximization of profit, is not sustainable. The Pope said it. Greta Thunberg has recently come out much saying that. The IPCC has said that our commitment to growth is not sustainable, but very, very few climate groups will expressly state that we have to end capitalism if we're going to survive climate change. And we have to reject the idea, which is often promoted, particularly by leading Democrats, that we need the market to solve this problem. Let's figure out how we can tweak the price of fossil fuels and renewables in order to speed it up. We could talk more about the issue of promotion of public power, which has become much bigger. One of the things we always point out is that we need public ownership of the energy system so that we make the decisions about it. That also requires us to take democratic control of that public power. Public ownership without the democratic control is inadequate. One of the things I think we need to talk a lot more about is the public ownership of the transmission grid. That's a big Achilles heel in the move to renewable energy. It's one of the big blocks. And the idea we're going to have hundreds of thousands of different owners of the grid make it work is ridiculous. One of the things we'll see in the coming years, unfortunately, is a tremendous focus on greenwashing and corporate welfare. When, New York State, they estimate the cost of the transition to renewable energy by 2050. We would say do it faster. It's going to cost $3 trillion. That's with a T. And that's just New York State. And so when you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars, the corporate lobbyists have their hands out trying to get their money. And you're going to see a lot of promotion of false climate solutions, biomass, carbon capture technology, hydrogen, and we can go on. And we're going to talk more about later. Hope to hear from you. But at this point, there's my book. As I said, it's on our website if you want to get it for free. Going to launch it on Earth Day. On Earth Day, at this point, we'll start selling it. But right now, it's free if you want to get it. Little Bill McKibben, Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader called me and said, I'll sign your book as long as you guarantee me you're still against nuclear power. I said, Ralph, of course, I'm still against nuclear power. At this point, I want to turn it over to David.
Yes, thank you. What a great introduction. Okay, I want to start my presentation actually with this graph from Kevin Anderson's recent publication, which already has been mentioned. And what it points to is, one, there is still a window of opportunity, although it's vanishing, to keep warming below or at 1.5 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial level, which there's a lot of evidence that if this target is exceeded, then catastrophic climate change of a magnitude far worse than we now witness will kick in. So Anderson indicates that the trajectory consistent with this target is to reach zero global CO2 emissions by 2040. So, and of course, this would require a radical changes in society, and obviously the near-term defeat of fossil capital and its political instruments. Okay, now let's start my presentation.
Okay, well, you can start talking. I'm going to make you.
So I want to say that I'm not going to cover every word of every slide. Rather, I will give a PDF to anyone that's interested in seeing the details. And so Mark is controlling this, and I'm with the DC Statehood Green Party. Okay, first slide. This is an editorial from the leading journal in Science, from April 1st, 2022. And this is not an April Fool's joke. This is a very serious editorial, which originally highlights really pretty much what I'm going to say in my presentation. To solve the climate, first achieve peace. And so the end to international conflict. And another very important point this editorial makes is that it's imperative to have global cooperation, and particularly with the US and China. So it is really an editorial against the new Cold War against China as well. Next slide. So what about Putin's war on the Ukraine, the invasion? One of the potential results, and we're already seeing signs of it, is that the liquid natural gas exports have increased. Next slide. No, go back. One more. Okay, stay there. And if the reserves that we know of quote natural gas are released, we would certainly exceed the 1.5 degree target. Next slide. So who's the winner in this war so far? Well, US, NATO, militarism, and we note the boost in military budgets and the enlargement of NATO, with Finland already a member, and of course, most of all, fossil capital and its instruments. And we also should take note that fossil fuel investments grew by $214 billion last year, even though renewables also grew slightly higher. But of course, unless fossil fuel is terminated in the near term, as we saw the slide from the graph from Kevin Anderson, all the building of renewables alone will not stop the climate catastrophes. We have to terminate fossil fuel consumption and emissions. Next slide. So we see already that military spending has increased since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and it's predicted from the SIPRI, which is the international agency that monitors military spending, that this is going to increase. And in 2021, global military spending reached $2.1 trillion. Next slide. And this shows a graph from World Population Review of military spending around the world. And the dark color is obviously the United States, with China quite a bit below in green. So the US is dominating military spending globally, probably over $100 billion, close to $1 trillion. Next slide, please. We also see indications that the Ukraine war is already resulted in a big release of greenhouse gases, and one from BBC News, they quote a figure of 33 million tons of greenhouse gases already, and this was as of November 14th, 2022. In comparison, in 2019, before the pandemic, the Department of Defense emitted 55 million tons. I'm listing Crawford's very important book, Pentagon Fuel Use, Climate Change and the Cost of War, that came out in 2022. Next slide. So what is the main obstacle of preventing catastrophic climate change? And of course, when I say catastrophic climate change, we already seeing catastrophic climate change, but I'm referring to a magnitude far greater than we've see now. And this is from a mall, a photograph from a mall in China, by the way. Next slide. So the obstacle can be identified as military fossil capital, which I call a zombie stalking the planet, ravaging humans and nature. I showed this slide actually at the centenary celebration of James Lovelock in the University of Exeter, just to be provocative. The same slide. Next one. Next slide, please. And if we go to a literary reference from John Milton's Paradise Lost, Moloch, which is figured here, is the horrid king besmeared with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears. And certainly the parents, if they're alive, of the 500 children already killed, Ukrainian children already killed in the Ukraine war, are shedding tears. Next slide. So the military industrial fossil fuel nuclear state terror and surveillance complex, or I call it MIC for short, is the main obstacle. Next slide. So we are now living in a capital O scene, and humanity faces this challenge at where we are now. Can the monstrous boulder of militarized fossil capital be pushed down the slope through its well-deserved sedimentary cemetery of prehistory, as Marx put it, on a path that minimizes the destruction of nature and humans? This kind of encapsulates the big question. Next slide. So I have argued for quite a while that the military-industrial complex is the block to achieving global cooperation for rapid curb on greenhouse gas emissions and a full transition to wind solar power globally. This we need to, of course, not only look at the $2 trillion per year in global military spending as an obstacle, but often quoted is the greenhouse gases emission of the Pentagon itself. So there are quite a few claims on this in social media and publications. So I wanted to deal briefly with this. Next slide. So how much does the global military directly contribute to greenhouse gas emissions? Well, I'm not going to read this again. I'll share the information, and the best studies were actually done by Netta Crawford, both in 2019 from the Watson Institute at Brown University, and her outline and updated in her book. So the total Pentagon greenhouse emissions from 2001 to 2017 amounted to about 0.1% of the cumulative global total greenhouse emissions. Next slide. Go back, one more. No, one more. One more back, please. This is a very important study, and I gave the link. They estimate the carbon bootprint, they call it, of the global military-industrial complex. So this includes not only the emissions associated with the military, but the industrial complex that generates the military infrastructure. And they estimate somewhere between 3 and 6% of total greenhouse gas emissions. And they say that even if it accounts for 1%, 5% or 1%, it all leads to the same conclusion. Next slide. And if we look at the manufacturing complex that is the military is dependent on, we can also recognize that the production of steel and so on and material infrastructure could have alternatively been for civilian and peaceful use. And of course, in a renewable energy transition, we have the potential of eliminating greenhouse gas emissions, including the production of steel and concrete. And there are technologies already in research and development that will allow steel and concrete production without greenhouse gas emissions. And clearly, if the Pentagon goes green, military spending and the military industrial complex imperial agenda are the critical obstacles posed by the MIC, not the sizable greenhouse gas emissions of the Pentagon itself. And I want to stress that global cooperation, most of all, is needed to prevent much worse climate catastrophes than we now witness. Next slide. I'm almost done. So we also need to recognize the military as a huge global polluter besides greenhouse gas emissions, in particular, not only radioactive and chemical pollutants, but also the forever chemicals that Pat Elder has done some fantastic work to document. That's militarypoisons.org. The PFAS, the persistent forever chemicals that have contaminated ground and surface waters, made fish and seafood really a potentially carcinogenic hazard and other effects on the immune system. Next slide. So I am basically done. And my motto is be as radical as reality itself. And I have at the end of my PowerPoint, which you haven't shown, I have a reading list. So again, I'll be glad to share this with anyone that's interested, and I'll put my email on the chat. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. And we're going to go to our final speaker, and then we're going to open it up to questions and answers and comments. Is Dawn Marie Green Cronin, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the ways that we in our personal lives can promote green living.
And that is all about living with the seasons and not trying to maintain temperatures constantly with your air conditioners and heat. That's number one sometimes. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Are you not visible?
I am. Hold on one moment. Let's see. Can you see me now?
Now we can see you.
Excellent.
Now we cannot see you.
Oh, how strange. Okay. It's my audio and my
No,
phone is
we can see you at the moment. Just
Okay,
don't
great.
change it.
What we have is there is so much that's going on with our changes in temperatures. With the climate changes, we're noticing that we're having 20 to 30 degree changes in one day sometimes. And when we turn our heat and our air conditioning on to try to make it temperate, we have such a crazy time trying to increase that. There is so much going on with the environment that if we try to reduce what we use, even just in that little bit with heating with wood or carbon-based fuels, transitioning over to something that's a little bit more affordable, definitely doesn't hurt our environment as much, because think about how long it takes those trees to grow. We also can make sure that we're living green when we're recycling, reusing, and making sure that what we do is actually in accord with the values that we are trying to help other people learn, teach. We need to do as an example for others. I am going to make sure that everyone gets a copy of the PDF slides. I've put the email in the chat, and it is to mday.greenparty@gmail.com. I'm setting that email up. It's all ready for us to go ahead and start broadcasting our ideas, brainstorming what all we can do to make a difference and getting some serious action going on now. We're losing our forests at an unprecedented rate. Brazil is clear cutting to put cattle in, to feed this strange desire to have meat at every meal. Just by changing one meal to a vegetation-based diet, one vegetable meal per day, will save so much of our rainforests. And that's just one of the many ideas that we have that really need to be thought about sometimes. What is that cost of that hamburger patty? What can I do to encourage more protein in my diet that is easier to grow? There are so many plants and so many other things that we can eat. I am going to stop right there. It's 8:38 and we'll open it up for questions so that we've got some time to really talk about what all you have questions about. Mark, back on to you.
So, we can start off with questions for the presenters, but we also, and I think people can unmute themselves, hopefully. I'm going to allow, so if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, we would ask, you try to keep questions or comments to under a minute if possible. But we also want to hear from people about ideas you might have as to what EcoAction as a committee could do to help promote activities during Earth Day to May Day, possibly things that you're already doing. But we also, want to hear what you, may be thinking, and any of the brainstorm ideas. So do we have any questions or comments that people would like to share? I mean, you can, what do you call that? Raise your hand electronically so we can see who it is. A quiet group so far. Elizabeth.
Yes, can we just put them into the chat with the links as I did in my email, and then each of us can react to, by putting a thumbs up or thumbs down or some other reaction to that chat entry, so that by the end of the
Absolutely.
meeting,
Absolutely,
we'll know
Elizabeth.
which ones have the most support.
The questions and the ideas?
So it was about which of the Earth Day to May Day events does EcoAction want to publicly support?
Yes, but I think we're trying to find out what ideas people have. So, there aren't a lot of events being organized so far. So we need people to propose some things to be done, or things that they may already be working, or you or we may already be working on at a local level, which you would like to, to support EcoAction Committee to help promote and get more people involved with.
We can definitely also help give you information about what your locals are doing. We're coordinating that behind the scenes. We've got 10 more days before this all starts off. Does anybody have something that they're doing in their own area that they want to share with us?
I do see that Mr. Hawkins, Howie, has his hand up,
Excellent. And then we have Rachel after that.
and Justin after that. So Howie.
For my weekly podcast, which is on Saturdays at 3:00 Eastern, near Earth Day, we're going to have Mark Dunley talk about
Bravo.
Eco-Socialist Green New Deal and getting rid of plastics and other environmental issues. And then for May Day, we're going to have Bill Berry, who's a Baltimore Green, long experience as a union organizer, and Natalie Monarez, who is one of the key people in the Amazon Labor Union at the Staten Island hub. So mostly she's going to be speaking. I'm excited to hear that. So to find out about how to get on the podcast, go to the greensocialist.net. And so that's what we're doing for the Earth Day to May Day.
Rachel.
So here in Minnesota, our Green Party isn't real strong right now. But I have been going out and picking up trash. The snow has melted over the last few days, and it's uncovered trash all along our roadways. So I spent 2 hours a couple weeks ago, and then I spent a half hour today, and I picked up 7 gallons of trash in a half hour today in one little area. I don't have a Green Party shirt or anything I was wearing, but I had a reflective vest. But
You know what?
Trash pickup event might be good.
You know, one thing people can do when they do trash pickups, do it's a little bit more work, is try to assess what's in the trash.
Mhm.
You know, how much of that is plastic bags, plastic straws, or things of that, nature.
Actually, I have something to say. I noticed today that there was a lot of like um, like antiseptic wipes
Hmm.
that I was finding. I don't think I would have seen that so much a few years ago. So I think people are using a lot of those. Like,
Those should be, you should wash those and reuse them. You can
Oh.
pour alcohol into the container that has those wipes in it and reuse them, turn them into alcohol wipes.
interesting.
I also mentioned one of the things that we have done in New York, actually was the Green Party was one of the first groups that really did it in New York State. But we banned plastic bags at stores and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then in some of the cities, we've been able, I think New York City, we've been able to go to plastic straws on demand. So particularly people who are disabled may need a plastic straw, but most of us don't. And 5 million plastic straws or so a day are handed out, and more than 90% end up in trash within sort of minutes. And now we're trying to do the same thing with restaurants. When you order takeout food or delivery food, that you have to request utensils and napkins. Otherwise, they don't deliver it, because if they're delivering it to your house or you're going to go eat it at home, why do you generate that plastic? And I did want to mention one quick thing people can be doing, especially around Earth Day, is to write letters to the editor, express some of this. But I believe Justin was next.
Hi. Yeah, I was just going to mention that, well, on May Day, there's going to be an Earth Day in Middletown. I think several towns are going to have some events, but I'm with the New Haven Green Party in Connecticut, and there's a very strong organization in New Haven, Unidad Latina en Acción, and they've done a great job organizing and becoming an activist force in the area for workers and immigrants. And they've had a May Day festival on the New Haven Green uh, several times in the past. We went last year. The Connecticut Green Party has endorsed it. We plan to attend and flyer and try to talk to people at the event. I went to one of the planning meetings and I suggested they have a maypole because I associate May Day with maypoles, and I think it's a nice tradition, especially to bring kids in. So I reached out to a local guy who does this. He runs maypole dances to lead people around the maypole to create a woven pattern around the pole. It's fun for kids. It's fun for families, and he has musician friends who are going to come and play some live music. So hopefully, we're trying to publicize that. Hopefully, get people to come out from the community, support workers' rights, and hopefully come to our table and get to learn about the Green Party of Connecticut, the Green Party of Greater New Haven. Yeah, so that's one big thing we have on our horizon.
Yeah, I know in Capital District, New York, the Upper Hudson Greens have often endorsed May Day activities, and a couple of years ago, supported the strike, union organizing effort by the nurses at Albany Medical Hospital. And so if you see, some of these worker groups organizing events, just call up and say, my Green Party group would like to endorse this event. If you want, we can provide a speaker. And, is it okay if we have a table or something and, hand out literature and bring signs saying, Green Party supports, whatever the issue is. Anything else, Justin?
No, that's it. And we probably will get a chance to speak. I try to form a relationship with these folks because last year they did let me speak from the stage, and so they'll let people from our party speak, and they have a lot of speakers speaking about workers' rights. I mean, it's a shame. I think the unions aren't the ones organizing, May Day, International Workers' Day events, but they're off on a different path, I guess. Um, I like the unions, but I don't know that they're always fighting as hard as they. Well, I don't know. I won't say anything.
Right.
Anyway, this group is organizing an International Workers' Day event, and I'm glad they are, and we're happy to support it.
And I'll just mention before we go to Robin, that in Upper Hudson Green Party in the Capital District, the gentleman who was running that and got us into, always endorsing events from May Day, he just got elected as the vice president of the Troy Area Labor Council. And so now we have a Green Party who's an official, labor representative locally, which is, helpful for us. Robin. Is it Robin?
Yes,
Yes, it was
hi.
Robin. And then we'll go to Rachel.
Both of my co-chairs are here, so I'm from Michigan, and they could probably explain more about it, especially Amy, since she's the one who started organizing it. But on the 18th, we're having a march on the Capitol, and one of the things that we're protesting against is the Willow project in Alaska. And then Amy can probably, immigration is one of them. Free Palestine, there's the war in Ukraine, and then some, those are some national things. And then we're going to be protesting some things that are happening in Michigan, one of them being that Michigan finally said that people have to follow the Elliott Larson Act for the queer community, but the diocese, the Catholic Church, is trying to say that they're basically suing so that if someone who's transgender goes to court, they have to use the pronouns that they were born with. They can't use they, them, they have to use. And so we're protesting against that because with everything besides that, they can't, no one that's queer could be denied a job or any of that now. And there's just been a lot of great things that have been happening in Michigan, but that's just one thing that's not acceptable. But Amy, if you want to tell the group about the other things, I know one was the Children's Indian Welfare Act, which I'll be honest, I don't know very much about that. So I have to read up on that before the protest, but we're doing that on the 18th. And so it's kind of a hodgepodge of different things, and people are coming from all over the state.
Great. Rachel.
So I'm involved in my local Women of Today group. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is anyone else getting that?
Yes, if people aren't speaking, if you can go on mute, that can be helpful to prevent background noise.
Can people hear me better?
If you have another device on, you should turn that off. Just make sure that you know it because it'll get feedback.
It's clear now.
Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, it's fine.
So I'm involved in my local Women of Today group. And in October, we had an event where we put signs out in the parking lot. And it just said, the signs said, remember your reusable bags. And we had 6 signs. It was a big parking lot. And we had 234 people who brought in reusable bags for this event. It was a craft fair. And what we did was we allowed anyone who brought in a reusable bag to sign up to win a basket that some of the crafters had donated items to. So they walk in with their reusable bag and we say, congratulations, you can sign up for this to win this basket. And they could see the basket right away. And it was really successful. And we're going to do it again for the next craft fair. And I think any group could choose to do this at a grocery store with the grocery store's permission to put out signs. I think I'm the only one who's not unmuted.
Yeah, we're not hearing you, Mark.
Oh, were you not able to hear all that?
No, we heard you, Rachel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I was just saying we will be sending around a links to the various things we talked about this evening on the Green Party EcoAction, webpage. There are links to both the Earth Day and then links to these various activities we're talking about. We'll send around David's PDF. If we can get information, I know people mentioned March 8th or April 18th and the New Haven event. We can also provide links to that. I mean, it'd be helpful to show people what other Green parties are doing. David or Dawn, do you have any other follow-up comments you want to make?
Well, I wanted to thank everyone for participating, and I'm just sending an email with a PDF of my presentation to several people that requested it. I just want to stress the point about the need for demilitarization of the global economy, and which is really a prerequisite to cooperation that will be necessary to avoid, to have any success in keeping warming at no more than 1.5 degrees centigrade. And obviously the ongoing wars are a big obstacle to making that possible. But don't give up hope. We can win. And it is possible to have a radical change in the world. And we need to, the elders here, those with the gray beards like me, I think have a responsibility to inspire the youth who are the ones that are really going to take the lead and already are. So those are my closing comments.
One of the things I think we'll also do is maybe draft some draft letters to the editors so that people can use that as a model to copy for your local papers. Dawn, did you have any final comments?
Today is the day that your dreams can start. What it takes is the moving in the right step and starting your journey. We
Okay.
all have our dreams. We all know what we need to do. I'm so sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I think one of the things EcoAction will also think about is sometimes Earth Day to May Day, we'll do some type of call to action or social media event, but we'll have the committee discuss what are some possible activities. So we want to thank you all for joining us. We will put this recording on the web in the next few days once it's up and running. Thank you for Holly for helping out with the technical, stuff for the event.
Thanks for not having
Probably.
any technical difficulties.
Can you leave the meeting open for about 10 minutes so we can all read the chat?
Sure.
I believe there's a way that we can have the chat recording available too. I can go ahead and send that out with the emails with the slideshows if that helps people too. What does everyone think about that?
Well, I thought we were going to make a decision at this meeting as to which of these events we were going to, the EcoAction was going to support and us.
We will have
officially.
to remove the people who are not part of the EcoAction committee in order to take a vote. The vote process is usually what we do as our part of the email with the listserv. So it gives more than just one or two people it gives everyone a little bit more time to read it than just announcing it and having that 15 to 20 minute idea. People can read, talk about it, and discuss it before we vote. We're going to be encouraging so many people in so many areas that to say that we're only going to focus on one area is limiting. Does that make sense?
Okay. So I guess we're finished. We'll leave the chat. We'll leave it open if you want to look at the chat for a few minutes, but we'll try to copy the chat and put it into the minutes as well.
Can I say something?
Certainly, Rachel.
So I mentioned earlier that the Minnesota Green Party isn't very strong right now. And one of the things I've had a hard time navigating is actually getting to be a member of the EcoAction Committee for the Minnesota chapter or whatever. I've had a hard time just getting in touch with the right people so that I can accomplish that. I'm just wondering if anyone can help me.
Absolutely. Please email us Earth Day to May Day at Green Party Gmail. We also have all of the other EcoAction Green Party emails. Did you get a chance to write that one down? It's ED, the number 2,
Yes.
MD, greenparty@gmail.com.
Yes, I have that. So you want me to
There's
mention that?
There's
as
other
well?
ways. There's other ways to join other than just through your state party. If you
Oh.
are involved in any of the caucuses or any other Green Party affiliated groups, there is other ways to get into the EcoAction Committee via those methods, if that helps.
Okay. I have been trying to get involved in any way I can. And it's been really hard. And it's been, I want to say it's been maybe more than a half a year now since I've been trying. So,
well, we are here to help, and you have brought that up in the right spot. We will make sure that there is a way to get you involved with the committee
okay.
and get you some information with what's going on. If
Okay.
you want to put your information in the chat or send us a direct email, we'll work at that. Mark, what is the co-chair's email?
I wish I knew. Probably
was
co-chair
say-
at GP.
EcoAction co-chairs at gpus.org. That's why I'm putting this other one in there. We have everything that gets forwarded to us, but we don't always know what happens behind the scenes with how some of those emails get to us. And so that's why we're setting up some that we can get a lot of momentum going fast for us too. And I see that I've already got an email in that email earlier today. So excellent. Holly, thank you so much for helping us today get everything set. Mark, we are at 9:02 and I am ready to go to my Council of Caucuses meeting. So I am saying goodbye to everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.